I live in a quiet suburb of Chicago, the kind of place where everyone knows each other's business but pretends not to. It's picturesque, really. Tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and houses with white picket fences that scream, American, dream. But sometimes dreams don't feel like they're supposed to. At least mine doesn't anymore. My name is Maria Alvarez, and for the past 5 years I've been married to Alex Carter. When we first met at college, he was different, ambitious, charismatic. He had this way of making you believe anything was possible. We used to sit on the library steps late at night, talking about our future, how we'd travel the world, build careers we loved, and create a life together that would make people jealous. Back then, it felt like we were unstoppable, like destiny itself had brought us together. But now Alex feels like a stranger living under the same roof. Somewhere along the way, the spark I saw in him faded. The man who once dreamed of starting his own tech company now spends his evenings scrolling through social media or playing video games on the couch. His eyes, which used to light up when he talked about ideas and possibilities, now seem dull, almost indifferent. And me? I'm stuck watching him drift further away, unsure if I should pull him back or let go completely. It's not just Alex, though. It's us. Our marriage has become stagnant, predictable, a routine without purpose. While our friends are climbing the corporate ladder, buying second homes, or planning exotic vacations, we're stuck in neutral. Sometimes, when I scroll through Instagram and see Emily and Ryan posting pictures from their latest trip to Santorini, I can't help but wonder what went wrong. Why aren't we like them? Why did Alex stop trying? Last weekend, we went to dinner at Emily and Ryan's house. They live in one of those modern homes with floor-to-ceiling windows and an infinity pool that overlooks the city skyline. As usual, the conversation turned to work and achievements. Ryan bragged about his promotion, and Emily showed off her new luxury car. Alex barely said a word the entire evening. When someone asked him about his job, he shrugged and muttered something vague about keeping busy. I wanted to disappear into the floor. On the drive home, I tried to bring it up. "Do you ever think about moving forward?" I asked carefully, glancing at him as he drove. "Like, maybe setting some goals for yourself?" He didn't even look at me. "What's wrong with how things are now?" he replied, his tone flat. "We have a roof over our heads, food on the table. Isn't that enough?" "Enough for what?" I shot back, frustration bubbling inside me. "For survival? Or for actually living?" He sighed, shaking his head. "You worry too much, Maria. Everything's fine. Fine. That word drives me crazy. Fine isn't good. Fine isn't... Great, fine is settling. And I don't want to settle. Not for myself, and certainly not for us." When we got home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Not just from Alex, but from both of us. There's a gap between who we were and who we've become, and neither of us seems willing or able to bridge it. For the first time, I started questioning whether Alex was truly the person I thought he was. Was he still capable of growth? Or had he given up on himself and on us without telling me? That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something unsettling. Alex wasn't the only one who had changed. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being hopeful. Instead, I'd become frustrated, resentful, and tired. Tired of waiting for him to wake up. Tired of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. And deep down, I knew this couldn't last forever. The days that followed felt heavier than usual, like the air in our home had thickened. I couldn't shake off the tension from the car ride home after Emily and Ryan's dinner party. Every time I looked at Alex, I saw the same blank expression he'd worn that night. The one that said, "I don't care enough to try anymore." It gnawed at me, this growing distance between us. But I didn't know how to fix it. Or maybe I was starting to wonder if I even wanted to. I tried again. A few nights later, we were sitting in the living room, him on the couch scrolling through his phone, me pretending to read a book I hadn't turned a page of in 20 minutes. Finally, I snapped it shut and set it down with more force than necessary. "Alex," I said, my voice sharp enough to cut through whatever digital haze he was lost in. "We need to talk." He glanced up briefly, eyebrows raised, before returning his attention to his screen. "About what?" "About us," I replied, my frustration bubbling over. "About why you act like nothing matters anymore. You used to have dreams, plans. What happened to all of that?" He sighed, finally putting the phone down, though his body language screamed reluctance. Leaning back against the couch, he crossed his arms and gave me a look that made my stomach twist. Not anger, not sadness, just resignation. Like he already knew where this conversation was headed and had decided it wasn't worth fighting for. "I told you, Maria," he said, his tone clipped. "Things are fine. Why do you always have to make everything so complicated?" "Complicated?" I repeated, incredulous. "You call ignoring your life complicated? Do you even remember the last time you talked about something you cared about? Something you wanted to achieve?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might actually respond. But then he shook his head, standing up abruptly. "I'm going to bed," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. And just like that, he walked away, leaving me alone in the living room, with nothing but the hum of the ceiling fan above me. That's when the cracks really started to show. Over the next few days, I noticed things I'd somehow missed before, or maybe I'd been too afraid to acknowledge them. There were unopened bills scattered across the kitchen counter, ones I'd asked him to take care of weeks ago. His old laptop sat gathering dust in the corner of the office, untouched since he quit his last job 6 months ago. And then there were the little details. The way he avoided eye contact during meals. The way he seemed to disappear into himself whenever I brought up the future. But the biggest red flag came one afternoon while I was cleaning out the hallway closet. Tucked behind a stack of old photo albums was an envelope addressed to Alex from a company I didn't recognize. Inside were a series of emails printed out, dated months ago. One of them caught my eye immediately. "Dear Mr. Carter, we regret to inform you that due to budget cuts, we will no longer be able to move forward with your project proposal. However, please know that your ideas were highly regarded, and we encourage you to pursue opportunities elsewhere." My hands trembled as I read it. A project proposal? Why hadn't he told me about this? Had he been working on something important, without saying a word? Or worse, had he given up on it entirely? I confronted him that evening, holding the letter in my hand like evidence in a trial. "What's this?" I demanded, thrusting it toward him. "Why didn't you tell me you were working on a project? That someone actually believed in you?" He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. For a split second, I thought I saw guilt flicker across his face, but it vanished almost instantly. "It doesn't matter," he said, shrugging. "They rejected it anyway." "It doesn't matter?" I echoed, my voice rising. "How can you say that? This could have been your chance to do something meaningful. Instead, you just gave up." "I didn't give up," he snapped, slamming his fork onto the table. "I moved on. Maybe you should try doing the same instead of constantly picking apart everything I do." His words hit me like a slap, leaving me stunned. Picking apart? Is that what he thought I was doing? Wasn't I trying to help him? To push him to be better? To remind him of who he used to be? For the first time, I wondered if I was wrong about him. Maybe Alex wasn't just complacent. Maybe he was content with mediocrity. Maybe he didn't want to grow because growth meant risk, and risk meant failure. And maybe, just maybe, I was asking too much of him. As the argument fizzled out and we retreated to our separate corners of the house, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said earlier. Maybe you should try moving on. The phrase lingered in my mind long after he'd gone to bed, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to face. Because deep down, I knew he was right. If things didn't change, if he didn't change, I might have to. The days that followed our argument felt like walking on thin ice. Every word exchanged between Alex and me was laced with unspoken resentment, every glance weighed down by the things we couldn't or wouldn't say. I tried to ignore it, telling myself that maybe some space would help us both cool off. But the silence wasn't calming. It was suffocating. I spent most of my time at work, throwing myself into projects to distract from the growing storm at home. My colleagues noticed something was off, though they were too polite to ask directly. "You okay, Maria?" Sarah, one of the graphic designers, asked during lunch one day. She tilted her head, studying me with concern. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just personal stuff." She nodded knowingly but didn't press further. Instead, she changed the subject to lighter topics, her cat's latest antics, a new coffee shop downtown. I appreciated the reprieve, even if only for an hour or two. But as soon as I stepped back into the house, the weight returned, heavier than ever. One evening, after another long day of avoiding each other, I found Alex sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. He wasn't watching anything. The screen displayed nothing but static. It was almost symbolic, the emptiness echoing in our relationship. "Can we please talk about this?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. My voice cracked slightly, betraying the frustration I'd been trying so hard to suppress. He turned, his head slowly, meeting my gaze with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Talk about what, Maria? About how you think I'm failing? About how you're disappointed in me?" His words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they hit too close to the truth. "That's not fair," I shot back, my voice trembling. "I'm not saying you're failing. I'm saying you've stopped trying. You've given up on yourself, on us, and what about you?" he countered, his tone sharp now. "You act like you're perfect, like you've got everything figured out, but you don't. You're just as stuck as I am." "That's not true," I snapped, tears welling up despite my best efforts to hold them back. "At least I'm trying to move forward. At least I still care about making something of my life. What about you, Alex? Do you even care anymore?" His face hardened, and for a moment I thought he might yell. Instead, he stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You want honesty?" he said, his voice low and steady, but laced with venom. "Fine. Here's the truth. I'm tired, Maria. Tired of feeling like I'll never be good. Enough for you. Tired of pretending I'm someone I'm not. Maybe you're right. I'm not the man you thought I was. But guess what? That doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means I know when to let go." My heart sank, the air rushing out of my lungs like I'd been punched. Let go? Was he giving up on us? "You're not a bad guy, Alex," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You're just not a man I'd brag about." For a split second, his expression faltered, hurt flashing across his features. Then, just as quickly, it vanished, replaced by a cold indifference that sent chills down my spine. "Cool," he said simply, turning away from me. And then he walked out. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly, like he'd made up his mind long before this moment, and had simply been waiting for the right time to leave. The door clicked shut behind him, and suddenly, the house felt impossibly empty. I stood there frozen, my chest tightening with every passing second. Part of me expected him to come back, to burst through the door and explain himself, to tell me it was all a mistake. But minutes turned into hours, and the silence stretched on, unbroken. By midnight, I realized he wasn't coming back, at least not tonight. I crawled into bed alone, clutching the blanket around me like armor against the ache in my chest. Questions swirled in my mind, relentless and unanswered. Where did he go? Did he plan this? Was this really the end? But the question that haunted me most was the one I couldn't bring myself to face. Had I pushed him away without realizing it? As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I replayed our argument over and over again, searching for clues I might have missed. His words echoed in my ears. Maybe you're right. I'm not the man you thought I was. They carried a finality that terrified me, a resignation that suggested he'd already accepted the fracture in our marriage long before I did. For the first time since we met, I felt truly alone, not just physically, but emotionally. And as sleep finally claimed me, I wondered if Alex had known all along that this was inevitable, because deep down, I began to suspect that maybe he had. The next morning, I woke up to an eerie stillness in the house. It wasn't just the absence of Alex. It was the absence of us. The quiet hum of routine we'd built together, flawed as it was, had vanished overnight. The coffee maker sat unused. On the counter, the couch cushions undisturbed where he used to sit. Even the air felt heavier, like the walls themselves were mourning what we'd lost. At first, I convinced myself he'd come back. Maybe he'd spent the night at a friend's place to cool off. Maybe he needed time to process everything before returning home. But as hours turned into days, reality began to sink in. Alex wasn't coming back. Not yet, anyway. And the longer he stayed gone, the more questions piled up in my mind. I called his phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail after the third day. I texted him, hoping for even a single word to explain why he left, but there was nothing. No response, no explanation, no closure. It was as if he'd erased himself from my life completely. Desperate for answers, I reached out to his closest friends and family. His sister, Claire, sounded genuinely shocked when I told her he'd disappeared. He didn't say anything to me, she admitted over the phone, her voice tinged with worry. Do you think something's wrong? I don't know, I replied, choking back tears. That's what scares me. His best friend, Jake, was equally clueless. Alex doesn't do drama, he said firmly. If he left, it's because he thought it was the right thing to do. You know how he is. He hates confrontation. But that only made me angrier. How could walking out without a word be the right thing? Didn't he owe me at least that much? Didn't our years together mean anything? As the days dragged on, I found myself oscillating between anger and despair. One moment, I was furious, at Alex for abandoning me. The next, I was consumed by guilt, wondering if I'd driven him away. Every memory of our relationship replayed in my mind, each one magnified under the harsh lens of hindsight. Had I been too critical, too demanding? Or had I simply loved him too much to see the cracks forming beneath the surface? Then, one afternoon, while cleaning out the guest room closet, I stumbled upon something that stopped me cold. A small leather-bound notebook tucked behind a stack of old blankets. At first glance, it looked unremarkable. But when I opened it, I realized it was Alex's journal. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, half expecting to find nothing but scribbles or random notes. But what I read instead shattered me. March 12th. Maria deserves better than me. She's always pushing forward, reaching for more, while I'm stuck in this rut. Sometimes I wonder if she regrets marrying me. April 5th. I applied for another job today. They rejected me again. What's the point of trying when nothing ever works out? May 17th. She looks at me differently now. Like she's disappointed. I hate seeing that look in her eyes. Maybe I should leave before she has to tell me to go. Each entry was a punch to the gut, revealing a side of Alex I hadn't fully understood, or maybe hadn't wanted to see. He wasn't just complacent, he was drowning. Drowning in self-doubt, fear of failure, and the weight of expectations he believed he couldn't meet. And instead of talking to me about it, he'd bottled it all up until the pressure became unbearable. By the time I finished reading, tears streamed down my face. For the first time, I saw Alex not as the man who'd walked out on me, but as someone who'd been struggling silently for far longer than I realized. Someone who'd convinced himself that leaving was the only way to protect me from his own inadequacies. But understanding didn't erase the pain. If anything, it deepened it. Because now I knew. Alex hadn't left because he didn't care. He'd left because he cared. Too much, perhaps. And that realization left me grappling with a new wave of emotions. Sadness, regret, and an overwhelming sense of loss. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work and household chores, trying to fill the void he'd left behind. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the emptiness lingered, a constant reminder of what we'd lost. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake in bed, staring at the empty space beside me, replaying every argument, every missed opportunity to truly listen to him. And then, late one evening, I received a text message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for leaving like this. I needed to figure things out. Please take care of yourself. Please take care." It was unsigned, but I recognized his tone immediately. Short, to the point, and achingly familiar. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I debated whether to respond, but ultimately, I decided against it. What could I say that wouldn't sound accusatory or desperate? Besides, the message itself was clear. Alex wasn't ready to come back. Not yet, anyway. So I let him go. For now. Not because I agreed with his decision, but because I finally understood that some wounds take time to heal. And maybe, just maybe, we both needed that time to rediscover who we were outside of each other. As I set my phone down, I made a silent promise to myself. I wouldn't let Alex's departure define me. Whatever happened next, I would face it, head on. Because even though he was gone, I was still here. And for the first time in weeks, that thought gave me a glimmer of hope. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm, one that felt strange and unfamiliar without Alex in it. I told myself I was coping, that I was moving forward. But the truth was harder to admit. I was stuck. Stuck somewhere. Between grief and anger, longing and relief. It wasn't just Alex's absence that haunted me. It was the unanswered questions, the lingering doubts about why he'd left, and whether I'd ever truly understood him at all. Then, one Friday afternoon, Sarah, the graphic designer from work, approached me with an expression I couldn't quite place. "Hey, can we talk for a sec?" she asked cautiously, pulling me aside after our team meeting. "Sure," I replied, forcing a smile. "What's up?" She hesitated, glancing around as if making sure no one else could hear. "I don't know how to say this, so I'll just come out with it. Have you heard from Alex lately?" My stomach dropped. "No," I said slowly, my voice tight. "Why? Do you know something?" Her face softened, tinged with guilt. "I ran into him last weekend, at a cafe downtown. He was with someone." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. "With someone?" I repeated numbly. "You mean another woman?" Sarah nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, they seemed close. I didn't want to pry, but I thought you deserved to know." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. All the progress I'd made, the acceptance, the hope of rebuilding my life, felt like it had been ripped away. In an instant, betrayal burned hot in my veins, sharper and more painful than anything I'd felt before. How could he do this? after everything we'd been through, after leaving me without explanation. How could he move on so quickly? I spent the rest of the day consumed by rage and humiliation. By the time I got home, I was shaking, not from sadness, but from fury. Who was this woman? Did Alex already have feelings for her when he walked out on me? Or had he simply replaced me the moment he decided I wasn't enough? Determined to get answers, I did something I swore I'd never do. I tracked down Sarah's lead. The next morning, I went to the cafe where she'd seen him. It wasn't hard to spot him. He looked the same, yet somehow different. Relaxed, almost carefree, sitting across from a blonde woman who laughed at something he said. Watching them together made my blood boil. When they finally stood up to leave, I intercepted them outside. "Alex," I called out sharply, my voice cutting through the crisp autumn air. He froze mid-step, his eyes widening in surprise. For a brief second, I saw guilt flicker across his face, but then it vanished behind a mask of calm indifference. "Maria," he said quietly, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I shot back, my tone acidic. My gaze shifted to the woman beside him. She looked confused, unsure of what role she was playing in this scene. "Who's your friend?" "This is Sarah," he said evenly, gesturing toward her. His tone lacked any hint of apology or regret. "Sarah, this is my wife, well, ex-wife, I guess." The word stung more than I expected, but I refused to let him see it. Instead, I turned my attention back to him, my voice trembling with barely contained anger. "So this is why you left? To be with her?" "No," he said firmly, surprising me with the conviction in his voice. "It's not like that." "Oh, really?" I snapped, "because it sure looks like it from where I'm standing." Before he could respond, the woman, Sarah, spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "Look, I don't know what's going on here, but Alex isn't lying. We're not together. Not like that." I stared at her, incredulous. "Then what exactly is this?" She exchanged a glance with Alex, who sighed heavily before stepping forward. "Let's go somewhere private," he said, his tone softening. "There's something I need to tell you." Against every instinct screaming at me to walk away, I followed them to a nearby park bench. Whatever he had to say, I needed to hear. Even if it destroyed me. Once we were seated, Alex took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. "Maria, the reason I left, it wasn't because of her. And it wasn't because of you either. It was something else." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. He hesitated, his jaw tightening as if bracing himself for what came next. "A few months ago, I found out I have a chronic illness, something serious enough that it's going to affect my life, and anyone else's who chooses to stay with me." I blinked, stunned. "What are you saying? What kind of illness? It doesn't matter," he said quickly, brushing off my question. "What matters is that I didn't want you to feel trapped. I didn't want you to waste your life taking care of me when you deserve so much more." His words knocked the wind out of me. Chronic illness? That was why he'd left? To protect me? But, I stammered, struggling to process everything. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give me a chance to decide for myself?" "Because I knew you wouldn't leave," he said simply. "And I couldn't live with myself knowing I was holding you back." Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. Part of me wanted to scream at him for being so selfish, for thinking he had the right to make that decision for both of us. But another part, a deeper, quieter part, understood. He hadn't left because he stopped loving me. He'd left because he loved me. The realization was overwhelming, a tidal wave of conflicting emotions crashing over me. Anger, sadness, relief, gratitude, They all swirled together until I couldn't tell one from the other. All I could do was sit there, staring at him, trying to reconcile the man I thought I knew with the man sitting in front of me. Eventually, Sarah, the woman who'd unknowingly sparked this confrontation, spoke up. "I think you two need some time alone," she said softly, rising from the bench. "Call me later, Alex." Once she was gone, silence settled between us, heavy and fragile. Neither of us spoke for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I broke. "So now what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where do we go from here?" Alex shook his head, his eyes filled with regret. "That's up to you, Maria. I'm not asking you to forgive me, or to take me back. I just wanted you to know the truth." As I sat there, grappling with everything he'd said, I realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't going to be easy. Trust would take even longer to rebuild, if it ever could. But for the first time since he'd walked out, I felt like I had clarity. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start moving forward, whether it was with him or without him. The days that followed our conversation in the park were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. Knowing the truth about Alex's illness didn't erase the pain of his departure, nor did it magically restore the trust we'd lost. But it changed everything. Suddenly, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The way he'd distanced himself emotionally, the resignation in his voice during arguments, the cryptic note on my phone weeks earlier. He hadn't walked out because he stopped caring. He'd done it because he cared too much. Still, understanding his reasons didn't mean I was ready to forgive him, or even consider reconciling. For the first time in years, I found myself alone, truly alone. And it was both terrifying and liberating. Without Alex, I had no one to lean on but myself. And while the weight of that responsibility sometimes felt unbearable, it also forced me to confront parts of myself I'd neglected for far too long. I threw myself into work, channeling my emotions into creative projects that reignited a passion I thought I'd lost. One evening, after hours spent sketching designs for a new client, I stumbled upon an old dream of mine. A dream I'd shelved when life got busy and practicality took over. I'd always wanted to create my own art exhibit, something personal and raw that told a story only I could tell. Inspired by the whirlwind of emotions I'd been feeling, I decided to finally pursue it. Weeks turned into months as I worked tirelessly on the project, pouring my heart into every piece. The theme was simple yet profound. Fragments of us. Each artwork represented a chapter of my relationship with Alex, the hope, the struggles, the love, the loss, but also my journey toward self-discovery. As the opening night approached, I felt a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. What if no one understood? What if they saw only the cracks and not the beauty in between? But when the gallery doors opened and people began streaming in, I realized I'd underestimated the power of vulnerability. Strangers lingered in front of my pieces, their faces reflecting the same emotions I'd poured onto the canvas. Friends and colleagues hugged me, telling me how brave I was to share such intimate parts of myself. Even Emily and Ryan showed up, offering words of encouragement that meant more than they knew. And then, just as the crowd began to thin, I spotted him. Alex stood near the entrance, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his expression unreadable. My breath caught in my throat. Part of me wanted to turn away, to pretend I hadn't seen him. But another part, the stronger part, knew I couldn't avoid this moment forever. "You came," I said softly as I approached him, my voice trembling slightly. He nodded, his gaze fixed on the floor. "I heard about your exhibit. I figured I owed it to you to see it." We stood there in silence for a moment, surrounded by fragments of our shared history. Finally, I gestured toward one of the paintings, a swirling blend of bright colors and jagged lines. That one's called letting go, I explained. It's about accepting that some things can't be fixed, no matter how much you want them to be. His eyes softened, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimpse of the man I used to know, the man who once dreamed alongside me. It's beautiful, he said quietly. All of it. Thank you, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. For coming, for being honest with me, for everything. He shook his head, guilt flickering across his features. You don't have to thank me, Maria. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, I admitted. But maybe none of us do, at least not completely. Life's messy, Alex. Relationships are messy, and sometimes all we can do is try to make peace with the mess. He smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in his eyes. So what happens now? I hesitated, searching for the right words. I don't know, I admitted. I think we both need time to figure out who we are outside of each other. Maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. Or maybe we won't. Either way, I'm okay with it. For the first time in a long time, I'm okay. He nodded, his smile widening just a fraction. I'm glad, Maria. You deserve to be happy, no matter what that looks like. As he turned to leave, I called out to him one last time. Alex? He paused, glancing over his shoulder. Yeah? Take care of yourself, I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. Promise me that. I promise, he replied, his tone soft but sincere. Then with a final nod, he walked out of the gallery and out of my life, at least for now. In the weeks that followed, I focused on building a new chapter for myself. I reconnected with old friends, joined a local community group for artists, and started volunteering at a youth center teaching kids how to paint. Slowly but surely, I began to feel whole again, not because I'd forgotten Alex or what we'd shared, but because I'd learned to carry those memories without letting them define me. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch of my suburban home sipping coffee, I received an anonymous letter in the mail. Inside was a photograph of Alex smiling, a genuine, unguarded smile I hadn't seen in years, and a short note. Maria, I hope you know how proud I am of you, of the strength you've shown, the person you've become. Whatever happens next, please, remember this. You're extraordinary. Don't ever let anyone, including me, make you doubt that. With love, Alex's tears streamed down my face as I read the words over and over again. It wasn't closure exactly, not the kind where everything ties neatly together, but it was enough. Enough to remind me that even broken things can hold meaning, that endings aren't always final, and that sometimes moving forward means learning to live with the unanswered questions. As I tucked the letter away in a drawer, I looked out at the tree-lined street bathed in golden sunlight. Somewhere out there, Alex was navigating his own path, fighting his own battles. And here I was, doing the same. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace, with myself, with my choices, and with the knowledge that life, for all its imperfections, was still worth living.